Committee members, we'll set the table, and the public will set the table. There's an issue that Senator Mizell has worked really hard on, and she passed Senate Resolution 52 during their first extraordinary session. And she's asked DCFS to bring her some statistical information, and she'll talk about the subject matter. So she does have a bill in Senate Finance, and because we're not taking action as far as we getting more informational purposes, I know you need to be in two places at one time.
I do.
But why don't you quickly set the table for what the issue is and what you'd like to bring to the forefront to the public, and what obstacles you've seen.
I'm talking to Mr. Partner on the back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what we're doing now is the intent was to have a discussion to look at the policy in place with the Department of Children and Family Services concerning consistency of care. I don't know if you all, as legislators, received correspondence that I received at the end of summer, actually at the end of session last year, on concerns that families who were fostering children were seeing within the department. And that those concerns and those emails brought about the resolution. And the resolution simply asked the Department of Children and Family Services to give their policy, how they implement the policy for consistency of care with the children in Louisiana's foster system. That bill was passed on June 30th. It was, I think, the last resolution to come out of the Senate that day at the end of session. I have since learned that the department didn't know that the resolution passed, and rather than use my words, I asked for a statement from the department, who will not participate in the discussion today. And if you'll let me read, it's a paragraph from the department. The paragraph is to Senator Mizell. Senate Resolution 52 was introduced and passed on June 30th, the last day of the 2021 extraordinary session. The department was not aware of its introductions or passage. SR 52 states that a copy of the resolution shall be transmitted to the Secretary of DCFS. The resolution was not transmitted. The department's first notice of the resolution was yesterday afternoon, when the agenda for today's Senate Health and Welfare Committee was posted and indicated a presentation would be made by the department regarding SR 52. DCFS Policy 6-305, entitled Guidelines for Care Setting Decision-Making Children Under Age 6, is the subject of SR 52. Policy 6305 is also currently the subject of litigation. A myriad of factors are considered in every decision about the permanent placement of a child. Each decision is based upon what is the best interest of each individual child. The application of the policy guidelines is very fact case specific. The department's testimony in a public hearing regarding the general application of policy 6305 could be misconstrued and used against the department in litigation before the United States Eastern District Court of Louisiana. The department is available at your convenience to meet with you individually to discuss and answer any questions that you or other committee members may have as it relates to Policy 6305. That appears to be the reason they're not here. Out of concern for how that could have happened, frankly, I asked the Senate staff, how was that done? And I received a copy of a letter to the secretary from the Senate secretary with the resolution attached, dated July 2nd. So there appears to be a disconnect somewhere.
And I want to thank you, because you've brought up such a great subject matter, and the resolution basically, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but what you have in your resolution is, and I'm not even going to go through it, but if you look at page 2 of your resolution, all you're asking is for statistical information. You're asking for how many children, how many cases, what evidence, how many families. you're not asking for anything other than statistical information. And DCFS here is here at every committee meeting, and you've asked him to be here just to talk about the resolution. And I want to thank you for your work, and I think that we need to probably press this matter more, because I think anybody can slice this where we can talk about the resolution, but if there's litigation, we don't talk about the litigation. But I will tell you that as the second in command to the Senate, DCF should be here to answer your questions.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
You are second in command to the Senate of the state of Louisiana, and you are being such a kind person to just say, I'd like some information on this resolution. You have the committee's backing on this issue.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, but more than that, the children of Louisiana need an answer on this
But
issue.
you are their passion, and you're their leader, and we want to be right behind you.
Well, thank you. And on that kind note, I've got to run to finance.
You go get your bill
so I can
heard.
get my broadband bill
and
done.
and we will be here because I think you
I'll
have
be
some
right
folks that
back.
would like to talk about. You take your time. We'll give them the courtesy. We'll try and be as good as you can be.
And I'll be quick, but I don't want to interrupt you. I have a letter that I want to be able to read, so I'm going to be very quick and come back. It's a letter from Dr. Zena, so I want to share that with the committee.
That is fine. That is fine. Senator McMath, I didn't know you might ask a question to an empty chair, but I know she had to leave.
Question real quick in a statement, and you might be able to answer this. When did you receive that email? Or that correspondence that you just read? Okay.
We have some more work to do.
I need to say this.
Please.
There was a number of us that co-sponsored that resolution, and to say that DCFS didn't know that it passed when DCFS was notified that the resolution was going to run and ran and had an extensive amount of co-authors on it is unacceptable. And unfortunately, this seems to be a pattern with DCFS, and I understand that it's a department and they serve a wonderful purpose, but they have failed on a few different occasions, and I haven't been here very long. So if they're watching, I just hope they take note. That's all.
Yes, and we have the luxury of having on our staff, we have Ms. Cannon and Ms. Peck, who have over 30 years of experience in agencies, and they've never not shown up, even if there's been litigation issues. So we have some more work to do, but I tell you, to move forward, I can tell you that the intent of Senator Mizell was to bring this issue to the forefront today. So anybody that would like to testify on the resolution, please, now is the time, and we do have some white cards. So we're here to learn more. We're here to bring this to public light. And as of right now, we won't do as good a job of Representative Senator Mizell, but we can tell you that her passion right now is to bring this thing to light, and that's what we can do right now. And I do want to tell you that some of the committee members will be back. They just testifying at other committee hearings, but that doesn't stop us from continuing to hear the testimony. So please, welcome to Senate Health and Welfare. And I know we're echoing it, but Senator Mizell is a tremendous advocate for your issues, and she'll be here as quickly as she can. So welcome, and just state your name, and we'll welcome your testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senators, and Senator Mizell has been very receptive to our story, and definitely want to express appreciation for her bringing this to your committee's attention. I'm Jacob Landry, my wife Courtney Landry. We live in New Orleans. We're small business owners, but before that, we each spent a 10-year career in public education as teachers, as supporters of teachers, and then I had the privilege of serving with Paul Pasterek on his cabinet at the State Department of Education, and with Jim Meza on his cabinet at the Jefferson Parish Public Schools. We were called by faith, by our Christian faith, to foster. We felt that there was a tremendous need in our community. We have 3 biological children. We felt like we have a loving, kind, warm house, and wanted to provide a stopping point for children who are in need and who are in transition. And so we were certified as foster parents a couple of years ago, and had the privilege of fostering 3 children. And we want to tell you the story of the last child. And from our experience, quite frankly, it's no surprise DCFS isn't here as far as what our experience has been with them. And so we want to tell you a little bit more about that.
Yes, please do. Tell us in detail,
Yep.
please.
Thank you. And as Jacob said, we fostered starting in 2018. The third child that we fostered was baby Z, and I realized I should call him by his initial, but I hope that that doesn't mask the fact that he's a real child, a very precious little boy. We took him home from the NICU when he was a month old. He'd been in the hospital 51 days, suffering from extreme exposure to a variety of substances, including opioids, while he was in utero. We'd never cared for a drug-exposed baby, and I will say that while we considered our family very stable, it really brought us to our knees. He had a lot of needs. He struggled to sleep, he struggled to eat, he struggled to be calm. If he wasn't held tightly, he was crying. But our community really helped us in that time. He got a lot of adopted grandmothers who came over to rock him and just help him feel safe so he could grow. Our family entered fostering to foster. We did not intend to adopt. We actually are aware of the Quality Parenting Initiative and very much support it. And we're meeting weekly with Z's mother. His father had actually died while he was still in the NICU. I went to her case planning meeting, and we were very supportive of her goals. We felt that our role was to provide a high level of care for her child while she was battling her addiction. But in February of 2019, she died of an overdose. And we learned that the day after it happened, and we were very shocked. And I will tell you that picking up a child when you've just learned that their mother has died comes with a tremendous weight. But it also felt like a tremendous privilege to know that he had just lost his mother, but that he wasn't going to feel that immediately because he was in a safe place. And before we could even understand what that meant for this baby, there were actually questions about paternity that took several months to answer. And during that time, we were actually approached by his maternal grandmother, who asked us if we would consider adopting. We also learned that because we were not an adoptive home, if we didn't declare ourselves an adoptive home, he would have been moved to another foster care placement. We asked about relatives, but we didn't see anyone stepping forward. So by the time we learned that he was indeed freed for adoption, we realized it wasn't really a rational choice to make, that every time we would discuss the idea of adoption, that there was a baby upstairs who already saw us as his mother and his father. And I'll say that that decision made us a family, not a piece of paper that ultimately we never received. So several months later, after he was freed for adoption, there was a half-uncle who intervened in the adoption. And we were told the plan was that he would be sent, he was about a year old at this point, out of state for a 30-day visit. And that was the position of the department. And by the time that happened, we were fully in the role of his parents. And so as anyone in this room who has a child would understand, when something is presented about your child that you think would hurt them, you speak up and you try to prevent that from happening. And our initial thought was not that we would end up getting a lawyer or fight it in court. Our initial expectation was that we assumed DCFS would work with us to figure out what was the best move at this point, that they would get a mental health expert involved, that they would do more due diligence. But we quickly saw that was not the case. Ultimately, last October, there was an 11-hour hearing where the judge that had presided over the case heard from a number of witnesses, and he made the determination that what was best for this child was stability and to stay in our home. And we were obviously overjoyed by that, but a week after that ruling, DCFS appealed that decision. And that is inexplicable to me because they knew that this child was getting excellent care. Their own expert testified that we were exceptional foster parents. But they then spent 7 months of taxpayer dollars and a lot of time fighting this decision. And ultimately, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the decision and said that the juvenile judge had exceeded his authority and that only DCFS could make a placement. And we're asking, what happens when DCFS isn't following their own policies and making a placement recommendation that's not in the best interest of a child? When we first read this policy, it was surreal to us because we had this feeling, well, if we lived in the state where this policy was in place, this wouldn't be happening. But we lived in Louisiana and the policy was in place, and yet this all was still happening. And I want to point out that at the time, the idea that this child would be sent out of state seemed like the worst thing that could happen. But we learned that actually there was more things that could happen that were quite worse. In this policy, it talks about how important, if a child is to be moved, that be done sensitively, that be a collaborative process, that there be a lot of visits on either end to make sure that it is as minimally harmful as the child as possible. But what actually happened in our case was we were told on a Tuesday night after Z had been in our home effectively his whole life up to 22 months old, Tuesday night, that he would be on a flight on Thursday morning, that we were not allowed to travel with him. And you can imagine what that might have felt like. We told our children, we all, as best as we could, told him goodbye, woke him up early that morning, and he was calm. He didn't expect anything to happen. He would trusted us waking him up in the middle of the night and taking him to the airport. And he didn't have a lot of language, but one word he has is bye. And when he's done with the situation, he would say bye. And when we were at the airport and he saw the stroller and he kind of saw that he was leaving our arms, he just started waving bye. And I know that he trusted us not to leave him in that situation. And we were asked to leave him in that situation. We have only seen him on brief phone calls 4 times since. When we saw upsetting signs on the second call, we brought those to the attention of DCFS. They told us to tell the psychologist who was overseeing the transition, and she didn't respond to our email. They told us after 4 calls he was adjusted to his new life. And I just ask kind of rhetorically, if you can imagine a 2-year-old child being moved to a new home and thinking that they only need 4 phone calls and that they will be fine after that, I would say that that's a ridiculous assertion. And this child had developmental delays. He had a hard time regulating stress. And we have been told nothing about his well-being since July 20th, not from his relatives and not from DCFS. And that is very hard to live with.
I think, the science in this particular case was clear what should have been done. And the department's policy is based on science. There's tremendous amounts of research about attachment and about what the long-term damage you can do to a child by disrupting that. But I don't even think you need science. Like, if you're a human, if you know children, if you have a 2-year-old or had a 2-year-old, or if you have a 2-year-old grandchild, you can only imagine what it would be like to hand that child to a stranger in an airport, to hear that child screaming "mommy" for the next 45 minutes as they get through security all the way onto their plane. It's inhumane. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. And the more families we talk to, the more we learn that it happens a lot. It's a lot more common than you would want to think it is. In my time in government, in 5 years at the state and local level, I have never experienced such a blatant disregard for established policy, for science, for what's in the best interest of a child. And I have never seen the vengeance taken out on a family that has stood up and spoken up for what's in the best interest of this child. The vengeance that has happened in court and in the whispers around this case outside of court emanating from DCFS. The science, as I said, was clear. We were the only home the child had ever known. Dr. Zena's letter that you'll hear a little later, Dr. Zena is one of the country's preeminent experts in this, and he will also attest that out of 100 colleagues around the country, every single one of his colleagues would have advised that the child stay in this home. So I want to end with saying that this case and our experience, I think, coupled with the stories that we've heard from other families, should give you a serious lack of confidence in the ability of this agency to implement its own policies, to do what's best for children, and to treat foster families with dignity and respect. And I think we would love to continue this work, but at this point, we and families who know this kind of story, would be seemingly crazy to volunteer to do this work, and we desperately need good families to do this. So thank you for your time. If you have questions, we're happy to elaborate.
We do. Senator Hinchkins has been very patient, and he asked questions once you finished your testimony. Senator Hinchkins?
And Mr. Chairman, it's not really a question. I want to thank y'all so much. I mean, we cannot say enough from this position how important fosters are to society. It is a bridge for a good portion of our society to get to adulthood. I appreciate your faith in holding on and continuing to do it through these troubles. Mr. Chairman, I also want to say, and to echo the rest of the committee, I've had the pleasure of working with Ms. Peck and Ms. Cannon for a long time on both sides of the committee building, and I've never seen an agency not come down here. I don't care if the bill was not posted till today. They had the respect to come to this committee and say, we can't speak to you on it today, but they needed to be down here today. And it's been disrespectful to the pro temp and this committee, members who have worked on this committee for over a decade, who have worked with DCFS to help them out in budgetary situations and other situations, to not show us the respect on this important issue, what these people are going through, and not to give us the other side of the story today. I'm really embarrassed of them.
We echo that, and you know what would be a good dialogue right now would be to call up the department to talk about just the guidelines, you know, to talk about what is policy, because that's what I think the Pro Tem wanted to do today is bring this discussion out and not talk about litigation, not talking about court cases, but let's talk about your guidelines, let's talk about your protocols, let's talk about your next steps, let's talk about what you do next. But this will not be the last time we have this discussion. And on behalf of all the committee and our staff and everything, you really are heroes to us to do what you do and to see your passion. And let's not make this the last time we all visit on this issue. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything else you want to bring out, now's the time. And, you know, all of this is archived. It's in minutes. Like I said, we do have some committee members that are testifying in different bills right now. In fact, Senator Mizell. But we do want you to know this is extremely important for us. And this is one of our missions. Mm-hmm. So thank you all. And y'all could have sat closer to each other if y'all wanted.
We allow family.
Exactly. Family members don't have to space. Anybody else that would like to testify? Yes, sir. So you, for the record, you just heard Jacob and Courtney Landry with representing foster families. And I think right now would be Mr. Kim Carver. Okay, Kim Carver is here to also testify, and he's with Crossroads NOLA.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, good to see you.
Thank you for being here.
Senators on the committee, good afternoon. I'm Kim Carver. I'm the Senior Vice President of Gulf Coast Bank and Trust in New Orleans. I live in Mandeville, and I'm a founding board member of Crossroads NOLA, which is an outfit that recruits, trains, supports, and develops high-quality, high-caliber foster families from a network of over 65 church partners on both the South Shore and the North Shore of Lake Pontchartrain, including the Landrys. They're in our network. I'm also an adoptive dad of 3 precious girls and a former certified foster parent here in Louisiana. Personally, and with Crossroads, we have been very engaged with the department's leadership, the Secretary of DCFS, her leadership team over child welfare, and with many of you in this body to bring innovative and bold reforms to the foster care system since 2015. And when I think about those accomplishments, several of them come to mind. The Quality Parenting Initiative that Courtney mentioned, where we all, biological families, foster families, judges, and advocates, all work together to remove the adversity from the system and create a system that has the best interest of child. The Louisiana Fosters Initiative that we've launched with the First Lady of Louisiana to grow the ranks of foster families and the much-needed support systems that they need in our state. And then the science of early childhood brain development, equipping the department, judges, CASA workers, foster families with the science of bonding and attachment, adverse childhood experience, and trauma-informed care. When the department doesn't follow well their policies or thought-out policies that are based in science and data, especially in the Landry case that has generated so much attention, but I promise, Mr. Chairman, there are many others. It has impacts that are costly. It adds toxicity to a system that is already hobbled, and it leads to poor outcomes for children and for our families. First and foremost, the decision to disregard policy in this case impacted the life of a child. Not some faraway, nameless, faceless foster child, but a real-life human baby boy. What we, and I say the collective we, as the state of Louisiana did in ripping a distraught toddler out of the arms of the only mother he had ever known, removing him from his family, his siblings, and his home, his entire life of almost 2 years, to place him on an airplane and send him to a stranger who happens to share some DNA, is inhumane. It is barbaric. It is cruel. I can say with certainty that the leadership of the department and each of you on that dais would never, ever allow this to happen to your child, to your grandchild, or to anyone that you know. Second, the decision to disregard policy is detrimental to our work. We say on one hand that we want engaged, thoughtful foster families who will be a voice and an advocate for the children in their care. But on the other hand, we are punitive and dismissive of foster families who engage too much, who speak up too often, and who love too deeply. The work, Mr. Chairman, of fostering is hard. It will stress your family to its breaking point. It will challenge your marriage and your family. It will complicate your schedule and your routines, and it will require a level of love, dedication, and support that you may not be able to summon on your own. And if that is not enough, you may encounter a bureaucracy in this department that treats you as an adversary, that lies to you and lies about you, and that maligns you and in the end deals its punitive hand against you. After all, they choose whether or not to follow their policies. This makes recruiting high caliber and high quality foster families a whole lot harder. And as a matter of fact, we have paused our recruiting efforts of families in the New Orleans region where we experience this breakdown with the department because we cannot and we will not and we should not subject our families to this kind of treatment. Lastly, the sum total of what happened in this case was a retreat from all of the hard work and reform that we have worked so hard on together to lift the foster care system in Louisiana. The decision by the department to abandon the policy and the other shared values that we jointly worked on has shaken many in the advocate community, and it leaves lingering questions on how we work together and how we improve from this place. You see, I believe when adults make mistakes, adults pay the price. You shouldn't transfer that burden onto a vulnerable child, especially those who have had the hard start in life. We have decisions to make, Mr. Chairman. We have to decide, senators, who we are and who we will be. Are we going to be a state that values science and data, not just when it's easy or when it's celebrated or when it's in vogue, but when it is hard? Are we going to be thoughtful and innovative in our practices? Is our guiding principle, our lodestar, going to be the best interest of the child? Are we going to show up when it's time to talk about the things that are hard? It's these reasons that I ask you to continue your review, to ask the difficult questions and engage in the tough conversations, and prepare yourselves today for future policymaking in this space, because a lot is at stake. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That was absolutely wonderful. Your testimony was absolutely great, and we will take your advice. We promise you. Senator McMath?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I followed this case and the story of the Landrys and Baby Z closely. Mr. Carver and I are actually friends. He's a constituent of mine, and so the very first when I first joined the Senate, actually prior to even being sworn in, the very first place that we went to was DCFS.
Yeah.
To meet the folks that you've been working with very closely for the last several years. And I had told you that this was an area that I would be committed to, supporting DCFS in their their role, because they do serve, a tremendous purpose.
They do.
But also, I was following this pretty closely because I have four children. My oldest is 6.5. We have a 2.5-year-old. I could not imagine the feeling that you felt. Excuse me. I think it was said earlier that there was clearly a blatant disregard for the policies that were established, their policies. And I've already said my piece in how disappointed it is, or I am. I think we all are, that DCFS isn't here today. And not only isn't here today, but this resolution that we passed in June, which clearly has a date on it of October 1st for report, was just ignored. Prior to what may or not be, litigation. We don't want to go into that, but I think that's important to note. Next session is a fiscal session, and I think we are allowed, 5 bills, non-fiscal bills. I can promise you today, I will make a commitment, and I'm certain that I'm not going to be the only one that does this, but given the fact that there was such a blatant disregard for the established policies of DCFS, I will be introducing legislation that seeks to codify those policies and that forces them to stick to it. So we don't have to have, this doesn't happen again. And I'll work not only to get it passed, but to get 39 co-authors in the Senate and 105 co-authors in the House, and send a clear message that this is unacceptable. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
So this is your constituent, huh? You have a tremendous senator that
Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
I can see his passion. And I will tell you, just to kind of recap, because I think when concerned citizens and such people that made a sacrifice such as you almost need to know what's the next steps. And I feel Senator McMath has told you that, and we will be happy to work with him, all of us. But I will tell you, we will get back together with Senator Mizell, because this committee does have subpoena power. This committee does have some certain things that we've not exercised since I've been here, but if we have to, we will do that. So what you did today is you set the table, you helped us to understand the issue. And I think all we can do right now is not only pray for you, but thank you and let you know that this is not going to be just a one-time discussion. You heard from Senator McMath. I promise you, if the rest of this committee was here, you'd be hearing the same thing. And I do have to now totally welcome Senator McMath to Health and Welfare, because he shed a tear, and you got to shed a tear when you're in Health and Welfare. And that's when you really realize that these issues, and that's what we want to do. But please know that this is not just a one-time, we heard some testimony and we move forward.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My commitment to you is that we'll be there every step of the way. And you know the close friendship we've had with the secretary and her team. We're not retreating from that.
Yes.
We
yes.
feel like they made a mistake and they made an error, and we've got to fix it, because we've got to fix it for kids.
Yes, and many times with the secretary, we've celebrated some success on separate issues. But I think this is a glaring issue that has been brought forward with the resolution. And I can promise you, we want to work on, as Senator McMath said, to codify certain things, put it in law. But I do want you to know that we hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you surviving the PPP program at Gulf Coast Bank?
It was a heavy lift for us, but one that we were thankful to be there for our clients. How about
I'd
you
seen
at
your picture.
bank?
You had hair before the PPP program. Thank y'all very much. Yes. Oh, yes. Senator Mizell, since she can't be here, and we'll make it quick. I tell you what, I'll let Senator McMath read it, since he's been working closely with her. She would like this put into the record. Did you want to testify, ma'am? Please do. And I'll give this to Senator McMath after the testimony. We'll read this into the record on behalf of Senator Mizell. Thank you for reminding me, Senator. Well, welcome to committee, and just state your name, and we welcome to hear your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Charity Aberhart, and I am also a foster and adoptive parent in the Covington region. And my family and I have fostered over 160 children in the last 5 years. And
How many children?
160 in the last
We
5
need to
years.
clap for this lady.
So, thank you. But along with that, we have adopted, have 2 bio children, and we've adopted 3 children. And we currently have just 1 foster child because of the state capacity limits. Anyway, I had sent in a PowerPoint, and they said that we could play that. I didn't know if we could play that first, and then I can explain why I'm here today.
Let's see what our audio experts can do, and we'll try and coordinate it.
Okay.
Let's see what we have. You'd like the PowerPoint first?
Yeah, if I could do that.
Sure,
just
we'll
so
try.
that y'all can see faces and understand.
Be
the
happy
reason
to.
I'm here. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
And if we do run into audio issues while we're working on it, we can hear more of your testimony if possible. Why don't we do that? Why don't we hear some of your testimony, and then when we can do the audio presentation.
All right. So I wanted to start out with a DCFS mission statement value. DCFS mission statement is caring for the safety and well-being of all.
Make yourself comfortable. You can sit right there. Look, that'll make you comfortable. That's too hard to stand up.
Oh, what was that?
I think we get making progress. So let's see. Maybe we can make it work. Was that?
Oh, I have to do it? Oh, okay.
Oh, she has to do it. Okay. Okay. So
Yeah, I didn't do, I'm not.
you're in control. Just tell us what we're seeing.
All right. So this is my daughter, JC, and her sibling. And I noticed we're not supposed to put names, so I'm going through that real fast. This is one of the visits they had. The biological dad and I met.
Why don't you get your mic, one of the mics, so that because some people listen over the internet and they wouldn't be able to hear you.
Okay, perfect. So this is just a picture of a visitation that we had with my daughter and one of her biological siblings at McDonald's. And then my daughter is FaceTiming her biological sibling. Then oh, y'all can't hear.
She's so cute.
Right here, she's just calling my daughter's name, JC. I don't know why y'all can't hear it.
I don't know if you'd have to put the mic to it, but we getting the gist of it. They're sure having fun.
Yes. So anyway, it's just different FaceTime visits and in-person visits that my daughter has had with her brother and sister. That's their biological mom and her 2 biological siblings, and then my adopted daughter. And then this is a picture of our support system that we have. So I wanted to show you guys all of that and then just kind of read what we're going through with DCFS. I want to start with the DCFS mission statement and value. DCFS mission statement is caring for the safety and well-being of all Louisiana's people. When I read this, I take note of the word all. I want to ask, which they're not here today for me to ask, DCFS, what does all mean to them? Is it just children currently in care? Is it biological moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents? Is it team players such as caseworkers, counselors, therapists? What about biological siblings, adoptive, and foster families? The value of DCFS is to treat all people with dignity, compassion, and respect while providing services and integrity. As I tell you JC's story at the end, I want to question if value has been shown to JC and her siblings. As some of you know, I'm here today to speak and hopefully have DCFS give me some clarity and insight while we're not allowed to foster one of our adopted daughter's siblings. We have been given the answer our home will be over capacity and the agency is not willing to approve a double waiver, in which we've had before in our home, and we know others whom during the same time was allowed a double waiver. And we also know others with just single waivers currently in place. So knowing we've had this waiver before and others have had it during the time period we're asking for the waiver, my husband and I feel that it's not a valid reason. We would like to know why this is so we can understand. And then I have DCFS's policy. It says 8-430, placement of a child. And you read under their placement of infants and children under the age of 3. And just a blurb out of there, it says, depending upon the case situation, the adoption specialist, foster care worker, and family service worker may jointly work with birth parents. It is strongly recommended that the infant be placed with his or her adopted siblings if possible. And my husband and I are more than willing to foster my child's adopted siblings. We see her biological mother. October the 4th was my daughter's birthday. We went to the park with her mom, had cake, ice cream, open presents. My daughter knows her siblings. She may have not ever lived with her siblings, but she's always had a relationship, especially with Megan, because when Gabriel came into custody, he was taken right into care. I'll start with that. My daughter's siblings came into care December the 20th, 2019. As soon as they were in custody, my husband and I were notified by M's biological dad. From that day, we started requesting the placement of my daughter's siblings. We were in Alabama for Christmas and drove back to Louisiana, and we spoke with 2 of the DCFS staff in Covington region. They graciously met with us, and we were told that they will look into requesting a waiver for us to foster her siblings. After many emails and phone conversations, we were told that they have decided it is in the best interest of the children to keep them in their current foster placement. My husband and I spoke with an attorney, and afterwards we decided that it will be potentially more traumatic for the siblings if we continue to move forward with the attorney due to the timeline that was given to us. We prayed and we were given peace. They were with a family just a few miles from our home who allowed the children to visit and FaceTime each other. Although this isn't the best resolution for biological siblings, it was better than not having a relationship at all. This family said to us multiple times they had an intent of adopting the children and allowing for the siblings to maintain a relationship if the case heads that direction. If the plan didn't head that direction and they were reunited, this was a blessing as well, as our daughter has visits with her biological mother that are FaceTime in person, and they're all supervised by her dad or I. Our daughter is only 8, but she's been through it, and she understands that Kay has to do her homework. She always called it homework because she didn't really, know what mom had to do to get her back. Anyway, so she knows she has homework to get Megan and Gabriel back. And she can visit with them when they return, but she can't return to live with her mom. On September the 28th, I received this text, and I'll read it to you word for word. Hey, Charity, I have something to tell you that I need to tell you. I know it's going to be one of the hardest things you might hear, and you most likely will hate us for this, and it's something we'll have to live with, but we're dreading that because we admire your family and all you've done in the foster care system. And I tried for 8 years to get pregnant and was never successful on our own and had many miscarriages. We pretty much gave up in that area and decided to complete our family through fostering. We knew that we wanted 2 to 3 children, so that's why we never accepted more in our home, because we knew our personalities and what we believed we could handle on our own child could also handle. When we accepted the children, although we had many struggles with them, we were open into adopting if that's where we were led. But we also truly felt led to mentor and minister the parents, which is the QPI, that we did not get to do with our previous parents that we had, and we wished we would have. However, when I became pregnant with a high-risk pregnancy and began bed rest and constricted on certain tasks and still do have unknowns about my certain medical conditions, we noticed a difficulty in caring for our 3 very young and needy children, and we began to question our role and purpose in their lives. We knew that we felt we were not mentally and physically equipped to handle 4 children ages 4 and under permanently in our home. I believe everyone has their mental and physical limits, and we were at ours, and we feel once an infant was introduced to our family, we wouldn't be able to attend to all the other children's needs the way they all deserve to be met. As far as M&G go, they have come such a long way with us, and they have had a transformation. It's been incredible, but they still have a long way to go. We've also noticed lots of personality changes and stresses in our daughter and ourselves that was not how we wanted to continue raising our family, in fear that would cause long-term damage to everyone involved. Unfortunately, due to certain behaviors that were exhibited in the beginning of self-harm and hurting our daughter, it has grown them apart and brought out a side to our daughter that is not going away right now. Even though M's behaviors are proven so much, our daughter is still struggling. We wanted to tell you this much sooner, but we were told they wanted the children to be in transition before their parents knew, and we could understand how that would make sense for a parent to feel more at ease having the transition in place. G and M have been transitioning to a family who is so calm, sweet, Christian, and loving, and does not have any children of their own. I am confident that they will give them so much love and equal attention they deserve. We do feel like God placed us in their lives for 9 months to teach them all they've learned and help them grow tremendously in so many areas. I know this might sound crazy to some, but we've prayed so hard about this path for months because of the severe attachment we have to M&G. This is the hardest decision we've ever had to make, and somehow God has put us at peace about it and directed our paths. So, and the thing that I noticed is, like, they deliberately, the agency knew when the kids first come in here, we had multiple meetings with them from December to around February, asking, like, why can we not be placement? We've had waiver after waiver, in our home for children. And for some reason, these two children, even though we had adopted their sibling, the agency wasn't willing to give us a waiver. And obviously, getting this text, broke my husband and I's heart. Just the month before that, or 2 months, we got a phone call for a 13-year-old with cerebral palsy, ODD. She has a lot of medical diagnosis, and at the point, we had 6 children in our home, and to get the 7th child in our home, you have to have a waiver for that. We were told that we would be given the waiver for this child to come in our home. And anyways, she's living with us now. I had told the agency, I don't need the waiver because one of our children are going to not a foster family, but a biological family in 2 days. And so because it was just that short time, we would have been over capacity, the waiver wasn't needed. But the agency told me, we'll give you a waiver for this child. So why are they willing to give us a waiver for one child but not my daughter's siblings? And it even said that, in the text I received, that the waiver was approved by her supervisor. And then I had my home development specialist call me and tell me, hey, I heard you needed a waiver to take this child. And so, I understand a 13-year-old with those, and she is hard to place, whereas younger children are a little bit easier to place. But this is still my daughter's siblings. So
not to interrupt you, but you're seeing an inconsistency in policy, and probably you do talk to other families, so you're not seeing kind of the same consistency in rulings?
I have several families, at least one I know for sure that had the double waiver. She had 2 to 3 children under that age, and then she had 7 or 8 children. I have pictures of it, but I don't want to show it.
No, I just was wondering, and I guess I would like to make an announcement to everybody that's here is, as you were testifying, and we had basically talked as a committee that we wanted to know more about the policy, the guidelines, what was presently in place. The secretary of DCFS did just text me, and she's on her way. And she is going to address the committee to talk about policy. Okay. So that's why I was addressing the question specifically to you with your experience, that you're just not seeing a consistency in what's policy out there.
Right. And I understand, the 13-year-old that we have she's hard, she's 13. A lot of foster families don't want to foster teenagers, and they especially don't want to foster teenagers with her diagnoses. We were offered a waiver to foster her. So I don't understand why we wouldn't offered a waiver to foster her and not offered a waiver to foster my daughter's
Okay.
biological siblings.
And that's what we're trying to concentrate more on is we're hearing the issues, and from talking with Senator McMath's thought process is we just would like to know more of the consistency in the policy of the department.
Gotcha. So to move on, it says, when getting this text, my heart broke for my child and her siblings. If the children would have been allowed to be placed in our home, they wouldn't have bonded with another family for 9 months and then transitioned again. We have told the agency we were fully committed to the care of the children until the children are returned home or they're adopted. This new trauma for the children would have been avoided. The children removed from her biological parents. They were not informed of the transition, and my daughter wasn't even given a chance to say goodbye. Now they're with a new foster family. My daughter has cried, and she doesn't understand why she can't talk to her siblings anymore. She's asked us over again if we know where they are. Mommy, is today the day I get to see them again? We have been told by her caseworker that she isn't allowed to come during planned sibling visits anymore. We went up there for one visit. The biological mom got the time wrong because it had changed, I'm assuming, that week. And we were there for like 5 minutes. And so we asked if we can come back again for another visit so she could see them longer at the agency. And we were told that she cannot come back up there again to see her siblings. So I don't understand why.
And the rationale was what? Why?
Give me any reason why she couldn't come back to the visit.
Okay.
And the biological mom would like her there. The biological mom called me after the visit, and she said that the caseworker told her my daughter can no longer come to the visitation.
Understood.
And it just says, again, I question the true value behind the mission statement of DCFS, and if the governing officials stand behind the decisions being made within our local DCFS office. Our goal is to make sure families are reunited when possible and not torn apart. I question the decision making saying that my daughter doesn't have a relationship with her biological siblings. Unfortunately, it wasn't your stereotypical relationship, but my daughter and her siblings love each other and they deserve to make memories with each other as much as possible growing up. In closing, I want to know, what value has DCFS shown JC and her siblings? Do you think the decisions being made are lived up to the DCFS mission statement and value?
Is the mission statement one more time?
The mission statement of DCFS is caring for the safety and well-being of all Louisiana's people. And then the value statement is DCFS is to treat all people with dignity, compassion, and respect while providing services and integrity. And yeah, I feel like they moved my daughter's siblings. We have no clue where she's at. She was allowed to, even though we couldn't foster them, she was allowed to FaceTime them. She was allowed for us to, call the previous foster family and plan a visit. We went to their house one time to see them, and now she has no clue where her siblings are. And, when I emailed them, I have several emails back and forth. They can't, it's private information. They can't give me the foster parents' information. So, to me, and I'm speaking for my child, but it's like her siblings died to her. She has no communication at all with them. And just this morning, she knew I was getting dressed and I told her I was coming here, but she was crying and asked me if she was going to get to see him. And it just broke my heart telling her I don't know when she's going to get to see him again.
Well, I can tell you, and Senator Mizell just came in, and Senator Mizell, we were just really just commending you for your work and your passion and knowing that you're not finished with this issue. The Landrys gave a tremendous testimony as far as Mr. Carver also did. And ma'am, you didn't, if you can, fill out a card before you leave that you testified. Tell us your name again.
It's Charity Aberhart.
Charity, thank you so much. And from their testimony, what we gathered, just so you'll know, is not only did we hear their stories and thank them for the work, but we also saw from their testimony that a tremendous variance in policy, guidelines. So one of the things that we brought out in the testimony, all the committee members, was we really would like the department here to question them about their policy, their guidelines, the consistency to what they're doing. And the secretary did just text me that she's on her way for us to address those issues. So she is coming, and I'm not sure if she's bringing some staff members. But being in that time, did you want to question anybody? Because I know you have some comments you'd like to put on record. So we're going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. I haven't met you.
No.
But I've read your story, and I'm so glad you're here, because I think, like the Landrys, it's really important that we put a face to the reality. You've opened your hearts and your homes to these children, and that's a huge investment, and that should be rewarded and not broken. And I just want to thank you all. Thank you. I know it's not easy. It's a difficult place to get to, so I really appreciate you doing it. But if I could, you have a champion who's had written a letter. May I read it?
No, it's ready.
Okay.
But before you get out, please tell the President Pro Tem Mizell how many foster children you've taken care of.
We've taken care of a little over 160 foster
Oh
children.
my goodness.
Those are like, when I say that, we've had like overnight placements, for 24 hours, 3 or 4 days. They've called us just anytime they've needed someone. Our house is always open any time of day or night.
I know it took a lot of courage. I know it took a lot of courage for you to come tell your story.
Very terrifying, because
I
we're
know.
still a current foster family, and I don't know what the repercussions are for us being here today. I have a foster daughter at home right now. Hopefully we can continue fostering her and see her placement through. But
We learn from you.
I mean, you're much needed, apparently, if you've had 160 kids there. But I want to.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. Zena, I know you all know him. Dr. Charlie Zena is an incredible person, and he couldn't be here. He basically has educated most of the stakeholders in Louisiana on brain science of children and how important it is for a child to be in the type of homes you all have created for the children in your care. He couldn't be here, and I'm honored to give his words, basically. But he says, "My name is Dr. Charles Zena. I regret that my schedule did not permit my being with you to testify about the important issue of the well-being of young children in foster care in Louisiana. I am pleased that you've allowed me to share some thoughts about this. I have practiced child and adolescent psychiatry for more than 35 years. For most of those years, my major clinical focus has been on children who have been maltreated or traumatized, and I have conducted research on the effects of abuse and neglect on young children's development and interventions designed to help them recover. I have worked closely with DCFS and juvenile courts in Louisiana for more than 25 years. As the committee is aware, child protection efforts are intended to promote safety, permanence, and well-being for children who experience maltreatment. Well-being is jeopardized by many factors, but a preventable threat to well-being is decisions that are made about placements without adequate consideration of young children's best interest. Today, I'm going to limit my focus to one especially problematic type of decision about placements of children in foster care. That is, disrupting fully developed, safe, caring, dependable relationships between young children and their caregivers. Specifically, I've been aware of many cases over the years in which DCFS has disrupted high-quality placements, and this means significant harmful emotional disruptions of young children in non-kin foster placements in order to place children with relatives. I think that most mental health professionals certainly agree that when children come into care, placing them with kin or fictive kin is preferable. But this preference is not absolute nor unending. Children who come into care of the state should be placed with relatives only if the relatives are willing and able to function as safe and effective caregivers for the children. In addition, as time passes, preference for relatives must be weighed against the cost to the young child of relationship disruptions. Developmental science is clear that stability of safe, dependable caregiving relationships is a key ingredient to young children's well-being. Disrupting well-established relationships to foster parents increases risk of harm to young children who have already experienced multiple risk factors. For this reason, the Department of Children and Family Services developed a policy 6-305 implemented in March 2019. This policy impressively derived best practices from developmental science. It says in part, recognizing the fundamental importance of stable attachments to the well-being of young children, the department will recognize the increasing importance of maintaining stability as time passes. And this is in bold type. If a child has been in the care of a non-relative foster caregiver, the attachment of the child to the caregiver is critical to assess. There will be situations where the attachment of the young child and the bonding to the caregiver outweigh other considerations, including biological relationships, in determining the best interest of the child for a permanent care setting. Essentially, the policy makes clear that the child's best interest dictates that stability should be increasingly weighed as time and placement continues. The policy also states that if the department is unable to locate a relative to provide a care setting to a child under age 6 very quickly after foster care entry, and specifically within 3 months of the child entering state custody, in many situations it may be the child's best interest to continue the child in the care of the foster caregiver if the foster caregiver has been a stable care setting and an attachment is formed with the child. And in bold, he says, if a relative is subsequently identified who is willing to care for the child, the decision to move the child to the home of the relative shall be thoroughly staffed with the child's team, including any mental health expert serving the child. His conclusion is, in my opinion, the policy's emphasis on intensive searches for kin placement at the time a child comes into care is correct. I also completely agree with the policy's direction to DCFS to be increasingly reluctant to move children who have well-established healthy attachment relationships to foster parents and substitute caregivers. When the department does not follow its own policy and instead disrupts vital relationships for young children and/or does not consult with mental health experts, it jeopardizes the mental health and well-being of children who have experienced multiple adverse experiences. Accumulating adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, places the health and mental health of these individuals at considerable risk. Following this policy consistently will measurably improve the well-being of our youngest and most vulnerable citizens. And that's Dr. Charles Zena, child psychiatrist. And I think that last paragraph is why we're here today. That pretty much states the reason for our being here. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and the timing was absolutely perfect by the Secretary. Just to give a recap, we heard from foster parents, we heard from experts from what they did, and I guess what we'd like to get to committee, Madam Secretary, you or any of your staff members, is, what's present policy? We don't want to talk about anything from a lawsuit standpoint. And we did, Senator Mizell did address Senate Resolution 52 in the information that we were looking for there. So from her vantage point, I think, and Senator Mizell, am I missing anything? No. What she basically wanted to know today is kind of what is the policy and what is the data out there. But we do not want to visit the lawsuit issue whatsoever.
Marquita Garner Walters, Secretary of the Department of Children and Family Services. And members, I have to say I have never been so upset as I am right this moment. And I apologize for being out of breath, but I walked as quickly as I could, and I'm trying to calm down. I have never disrespected this committee, and the attitudes shown by these members about me and my department is unfair. Senator Mizell, you and I talked last night and agreed that we would not come today because of the lawsuit. So imagine my surprise when I come out of a very hard part of my job, that every month I have a child death review committee to hear about children in the state that have died. I come out of that meeting to turn on this hearing and hear that I was disrespectful by not being here after we agreed I wouldn't come. And Senator Mills, I said to you this morning I would not be here because of the lawsuit. And I thought you agreed to that. Had I had any indication that you wanted me here, I would have been here. I have never disrespected this body, ever.
Madam Secretary, your work is impeccable, and it's not been brought, but what was brought,
Found impeccable when I'm being attacked
Well-
by members of the committee.
let me just bring one point. We did not say for you to be here. We were just looking for somebody from a policy aspect. I did leave a voicemail message this morning that basically said I would bring somebody that has some policy expertise. This is not an attack of you or the department. It's just some information to bring to the committee as far as the policy is concerned. None of the lawsuit was to brought up, and it wasn't the secretary to be here. It's just somebody in the department to give some information.
So, Senator Mills, let me say this. I'm not a lawyer. It is abundantly clear that anything that we say in this committee on public record can be used against us in the lawsuit that is currently against us. And so, therefore, it is on legal advice that we chose not to testify, and that's why we explained that we're in a lawsuit. I can't speak to what's going on. The policy is the crux of the lawsuit. What happened with the Landrys and the child is a multifaceted thing, but part of their legal argument is based on we didn't follow our own policy. So if I speak to the policy, then it's germane to the lawsuit.
So you can't tell us what the policy is, just the policy as right now that you have, not to talk about the lawsuit or deviation of policy. What is the policy?
Senator McMath, aren't you a lawyer?
Non-practicing.
But if I speak to something that is germane to the lawsuit, doesn't that make it germane to the lawsuit?
Well, I don't think that's the question, Madam Secretary. First of all, this is not me offering you legal advice. I think the question is to the policy itself and not to the lawsuit, which has been a topic that we've clearly been discussing. I think Madam Pro Tem just read a letter from Dr. Zena in which he cites that policy.
Yes.
And so it is relative to the discussion that we're having today.
And portions of the policy have been read. The policy is multiple pages. You have not been given all of it, and you have pieces of it that are taken out of context. I am happy to, I'm not going to sit here and read it, but I'm happy to give you copies of it. I am happy to go into a closed-door session and talk about this as long as you want to, but not on public record when I'm being sued. And I just have to say on the record again, I have never, nor has anybody on my staff, ever disrespected this body. And to hear people say that the next session is fiscal and they'll get everybody to come after us, I'm baffled at that behavior when we have never done anything but act in good faith, as I did last night on the phone with you, as Dr. Hodnett did, and as I did with you this morning. I'm totally baffled why we would be painted as uncooperative and unwilling to come.
Madam Secretary, I'll turn it over to Senator Mizell and McMath. What we were just looking for was a clarity of what the policy is.
I am happy
Now,
to
that's
give you the
all we were looking for today. And when you sent me a message, I wasn't able to get the call. I left you a voicemail message that I would have someone from the department here to answer any questions concerning, I think, the policy. It was not to even get into anything with the lawsuit. It was just to understand what your present policy was that you have in place. That's really all we've been talking about here. And we were really to the point where it seems like there's always somebody from DCF in the audience anytime we have a hearing.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't matter what we do, there's
That's
always
right.
someone from DCFS.
Always here.
So we were just looking for somebody that could give us some information on policy, and it seemed odd to us. It seemed odd to us as a committee that no one at all was here from DCFS, and we were just looking for somebody to give us some clarity on the policy, as some of the people that testified, not the Landrys, but some people testified, there was deviation in policy, not consistency with policy, and some families, when they compared notes, saw a lot of discrepancy. Once again, we were just looking for some clarity in policy and procedure, not to talk about the lawsuit. We've had other issues before. I know Commissioner Darden's been in front of issues where he says, I'm presently in litigation, but I can talk to you about what our department does. So if there's been any kind of hurt feelings and anything, that was not the intent. That was not the intent, because you have been in this committee many times with families doing the best you can, and you've done a great job. But from Senator McMath's standpoint, he was saying if the policy needs to be codified, that was something he'd like to work on this session. So I'll turn it over to Senator Mizell. Senator?
And I'll be brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And absolutely, I hope you know how much we support what you do. But there's this huge elephant in the room. And when the resolution asks for statistics, it's not law, no, it's statistics.
We are happy to do the report from that resolution. I did not get service. I knew about the report yesterday, and I told you that last night.
You did, and I read your response, and
we will
it
be
was
happy
upsetting.
to do the report as quickly as humanly possible to give you all the data you ask for.
But I think the discomfort we all feel, none of us want to have you here feeling bad, Marquita. None of us. We know how dedicated you are. But we have got to all be on the same team. We've got to have confidence that situations of heartbreak like we see, and I get in emails, are not happening. I mean, I don't know how to make it any simpler than that. But please tell us what we need to know to be on your team. I mean, the whole point of the resolution was enlighten us. Dr. Zena is way up here.
Yes, he
And
is.
when Dr. Zena is wringing his hands, it's concerning. And I think more than anything, we thought there would be some answers forthcoming today. And when all we heard was more heartbreak, it's like, here we sit. Here we sit. We want to fix things. We've got the champion of fixing things right here. So we want to do something to make these outcomes what we all want them to be. So there was no intent to hurt. There was absolutely, I felt, I didn't hear it, but I felt a gasp when the department didn't know the resolution had been filed. I mean, I'm just telling you. That's maybe that started a level of concern that took it in a difference. But I'm saying, you're here, tell us something that's going to help us get past this.
What I would respectfully request is that we have time to write the report, to give to you, and then have a hearing on the report. I did not know. I will put my executive assistant up against anybody in state government. If a paper had come to my office that said we had a report to file, we would have done the report. We do lots of reports for the legislature, lots of them. We serve on lots of committees, and we write lots of information for you. Anytime any of you have ever asked us for anything, we have given it to you. So if I had known that there was a report, there would have been a report written. So all I can say is, I'm sorry you don't have it. Had I known, I would have had it. I did not know. You can choose to believe that or not, but I had no knowledge, and neither did any of my child welfare staff or my legislative staff, that there was a resolution passed that asked us to do a report. So we will do the report. and we'll be happy to come and talk to you about all the data that you look for in the report. It is not data that we can easily pull. It will be hand pulled, so I can't say we can write the report in a week, but we will write it quickly, and if you want to set us a timeline, we will meet it. If you want it before the end of this session, which I assume you would, we will do that, and we will bring you everything that we can get. Most of you know, because you voted for a technology upgrade for us, that our technology systems are older than my children, and there are no easy buttons to push to get data out that comes out in the way the report asks for it, but we will hand pull it, and we will get you every piece of data that we can get, and we will come back and we will talk about it. I do not know how deeply I will give you the policy to read for yourself in its entirety, but I want to be clear that I do not know how deeply I can go into policy when I'm being sued about the policy. I just simply don't believe that those two things work, and I'm not a lawyer. But
Is your policy a public document?
yes, sir.
So it seems like you can go over a public document.
When every word that I say at this microphone is going to be used me in a court of law, Senator, I respectfully disagree. I will give you the policy and let you read it.
That's fine. We'll put it in the record and we'll all take a look at it, and we'll look at it. Senator Barrow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to kind of go on the record. I have missed a lot of probably what transpired because I was in another committee. And so, Madam Secretary, I am sorry that you feel that, you've been some level of betrayal in terms of what people think about the department. I can assure you that I believe most of our colleagues know the level of the work and the intent of what you guys do at the Department of Children and Family Services. You've been cut drastically over the past decade, and so you're working with about 55% of the staff that you had prior to a decade ago. And so I want to first speak to that and hope that we're able to get beyond that, because I know for sure, and I do believe that many of my colleagues understand the level of the work, of the intensity of what you guys do. And it's not easy work. It is not easy work. It's a tough job, and people are not really properly compensated that actually do this work. But I was trying to look at the resolution. A lot has happened, and so, to my colleagues, I do want to say this. How many hurricanes have we been through? I want to say 4.
This is our 5th response, and we are
Since
sheltering 9,000
it's July or
people.
since the end of
Yes,
last
this
session?
hurricane season.
Yeah. So I'm not offering an excuse, but I know that you guys have been tasked with a lot to do because you are responsible for the recovery efforts as it relates to when a disaster happens. You have to go into recovery mode in terms of assisting families and so forth and so on. And so I can see how something may have fallen through the crack. I do not believe that it was intentional that it was not submitted. So I want to go on record and say to my colleagues that I don't believe that it was intentional. As it relates to the lawsuit, whatever information that you are able to provide to us, I would ask that you do that. However, I would caution you not to put yourself in a box and saying that you're going to do it by a certain time frame, because you are working with very dated equipment, with an overstressed staff that has been still working the last hurricane, working Hurricane Laura, and doing other things that would make it almost impossible for you to get it to us. I would hope that maybe offline there could be a conversation in terms of what is a practical time that this can be sent back to us. But I will caution you to say that you can get it to us by the end of session. I don't know if that's really realistic, especially as I have heard that we're trying to end before the end of the month. So then that would present a whole nother issue. Yes, I would just caution you not to do that, but I hope that you guys are able to have a discussion offline about a practical time when we can actually have that report submitted and maybe have a hearing on that. Again, I just think that people are just stressed. Everybody's stressed. We have been through, in general, everybody have been through some very tough times. I mean, COVID-19 was the first thing we have to deal with, and we're still dealing with it. And then here in Louisiana, which your department is tasked with, you've had 5 disasters that you've had to respond to, and you're still working. So I just want to make sure I put that out there, and I want you to know that I believe my colleagues understand the level of work and intensity that you do, and we are not by any means necessary trying to denounce that or try to play it down or try to say that you are purposely not doing anything.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well said. Senator Hitchkins?
I think she summed up most of it, the Vice Chair did, Mr. Chairman. But, Madam Secretary, I want to say that we've worked together for 5 years from appropriations on the technology unit and health and welfare on the other side. And what you've done in the last 10, 15 minutes, I think is what we wish somebody was in the room to do a half an hour ago. Just someone to tell us what you could say and what you couldn't say. To be here to ask a few questions, to get the response, back and forth conversation. For no one to be here was just different for us. I mean, we're used to looking out somebody, oh, there's someone from DCFS is here. Could you come onto the table and hold this conversation that you just did in the last 15 minutes? So for coming down here now, I appreciate it. The attitude earlier was because there was no one out there to ask that question to. So, but I do thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Well said. Senator Boudreaux?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to be redundant in any way, but I want to reiterate my support for your leadership. I want to reiterate the task. I know you served under a previous governor, and you came back and had half of the staff, and there were more requests. And I think Senator Barrow probably hit it. There's just a lot of tension. There's so many moving parts, and from this senator to you, Madam Secretary, it would never be disrespectful in any way. I too started here, went to finance, went to a meeting in the governor's office, and thought I was going to be able to go sit down for a few minutes, and then they said something's going on in health and welfare. I say, well, I want us to relax a little bit and smile, because I was coming down the hall. I was going to go to my office and just kind of close the door and turn the light off for a minute and just chill before we go on the floor. And they said, there's something going on in health and welfare. I didn't know what in the hell I was walking into, but I felt the tension when I got here. And it's unfortunate. I want us to hit the reset button. This guy next to me has been a friend for 40 plus years as the chairman of this committee. He's not going to let a freight train run over anybody. He's going to take it first. I have the utmost confidence that this committee will do whatever needs to happen to get it, and under his leadership, the members of this committee will make sure that we're always respectful, we always do the right thing. And like I said, not being in on the first part, all I want to do is just tell you from the bottom of my heart, you were here and left and came back to do a job that a lot of people would not take under those circumstances. To the men and women in your department, I want to tell them thank you. Senator Barrow hit it on the head. We don't know what we're going to deal with before the end of 2020. But again, under Chairman Mills' leadership, we're going to get where we need to get. If we all just take a deep breath, we just say a quick little prayer that the Lord give us that inner strength and guidance to just understand during difficult times, there's a lot of tension and stress. We're going to get there. And I want you to know we're going to get there together. And I heard Senator Mizell as I walk in said, we're on the same team. I know that. I know that you and your staff want to make sure that everybody in this state have an opportunity regardless of what the rules are. And I know there's some other circumstances that we're dealing with. But, Mr. Chairman, we just take 10 seconds and just pause for a minute, let the Lord and his light shine on us and come into us and just remove some of the tension that we have in us, some of the disappointment, some of the frustration, some of the anger. And when we hit that reset button, we all know that we're gonna come out of this together. If we can, just pause for 10 seconds. I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Madam Secretary, thank you again for your leadership.
Thank you so much.
Eloquently said. Senator Boudreaux? I'm saying Senator Mizell. Senator Boudreaux just finished.
I just want to, I think we've all been affected. I mean, I've never been in a committee where we stopped and had a moment of silence for 10 seconds about our mood. That's how intense we all feel. But I just had an opioid bill. The opioid bill didn't make it because we didn't have enough providers here. We don't have any children here. We don't have anybody that's affected by what we're talking about here but the parents. And, we're trying to do, with absolute full respect, you carry a huge load. But we're trying to do what we can for those who are not here, that we're looking out for, that the funding you get, because we all love the kids in Louisiana. We all love our children. We all want to do the right thing. And I think we're all just trying to find a way to find a path to that right thing. How do we make it where the sadness never happens? That's what we're asking you. That was the intent of the resolution. I know I'm repeating myself, but if we could leave on the note that with the next time we meet, we will know more. And I think maybe it's my age. I just feel like we can't waste a lot of time. People's lives are affected by what we don't know and what we don't try to fix. And this is one of those things. I mean, there's reasons, and then there's just impossible. So if you could get us this information, we could see what could be done. We look at the policy as it is, and we get the lawyer McMath over there to interpret it for us. And then we go from there, working together for the outcomes we all want. So I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate it, and I know we all do. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Senator McMath?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, it's very clear that it was probably my thoughts that I aired that prompted maybe the reaction that happened today. And having you here, I'm glad you're here now. Chalk it up to if it came across as I was attacking you or your department, that was not my intention. I think hearing the stories that we heard today and applying that to my young children maybe have gotten the best of me. But I also know that if there was representation here today, probably wouldn't have gotten that far. But again, I'm glad you're here. And I look forward to hitting the reset button, as Senator Boudreaux said. I carried a bill for you guys in my very first regular session. I always want to be an ally and a supporter of DCFS, but more importantly, and I think the rest of the committee would probably agree with this, as would you, that we're here not for us, but for the children of the state of Louisiana. And I think if we all take that into account, we're all on the same team.
And
So
you proved that when you came to meet with me, as you said, before you were even installed, whatever the proper word is, as a senator, and before you were sworn in at an event that we were both at.
yes, ma'am.
I know your hearts. That's why it was so disappointing to tune into a committee that felt so very harsh. I fully commit to continue the work that I have done for the majority of my life for children and families. I'm older than all of you, And so I've been doing this work longer than some of you have been on this earth. I won't stop fighting for children and families, regardless of how many times I'm sued. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And let's just kind of recap for everybody. So what the action plan is, I totally agree with the vice chair. Don't put a timeline, especially with the session. Potentially, we don't know when it'll end. So let's not put a timeline. Let's make a commitment to one another that this is an important issue. We can call a special committee meeting at any time. We'll work on everybody's schedule. So our to-dos will be the Department of, will do what needs to be done, and we fully respect your timeline and what needs to be done there. We can call a committee meeting at any time. I'll talk to the president. We'll do that. For the families that came here, we heard you loud and clear, and I think we've heard this in committee many times before. Sometimes there's a disconnect with what the legal responsibilities are, and sometimes which you have here. We learned a lot from you, so your testimony is very well received. And I guess on a lighter note, I would say that, Madam Secretary, I think from the committee standpoint, we've sat here maybe and debated raw milk for 2 hours, and a DCF person has sat there diligently in case needed for information. And I think that's what had maybe a little disconnect here, but I think everybody's made their statements that we truly value you, the work of the department. And what I don't think the public knows is we call that department almost on a daily basis with things that are in the ditch, and they always pull it out of the ditch, because we have constituent issues that this department is always there for us. I think in this situation, I think it was almost the standpoint of where is somebody from DCS to just understand policy. It was not a jab at you. It was not a jab at the department. It was, we need some clarity because we're having some expert testimony, and we just need some clarity to understand it. So with that, why don't we hit the reset button, as Senator Boudreaux said. And I think what really stands to our newer members, we said health and welfare brings out laughter. It brings out tears. It brings out a lot of emotion, and you do it because you love it. We volunteered for this committee because we love it. So we're on the same mission. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it right. But I will promise everybody that's here, we'll have another discussion when we have the data. Thank you all very much.